Greetings and blessings to all. Welcome to this live stream from my secret bunker. You're tuned in to Travelog Media. Thanks for being here. In just a moment, I'm going to start an episode, our latest episode, where we talk about the Shock Doctrine, the book and documentary from Naomi Klein. So if you've been wondering where we got this Frankenstein economic system, you'll definitely want to stick around and check out the episode. But just a quick reminder, we do have some merch available from the Travelog Media online store. COVID masks, t-shirts, tote bags, all kinds of wonderful stuff. So definitely check that out. Put a link to that in the chat or somewhere around the video. And once again, thanks for tuning in. And please feel free to add your comments. Of course, during the live stream, I'll be able to respond in real time. And with that, let's start the episode on the Shock Doctrine.
I think one of the things that America has to face is the reality that it is an empire.
No, you mustn't use it. You mustn't use it because it make you rebel. Against what?
They were in front of Radio 8, shooting at the station.
No es un crimen defender nuestros propios derechos como pueblos indígenas.
Greetings and blessings. You're listening to Travelog Media. I'm Jason Claral, recording from a secret bunker in Quetzaltenango, Guatemala. Thanks for joining. In this episode, we're going to get into the documentary film The Shock Doctrine, which is, of course, the companion to Naomi Klein's 2007 book of the same title. And since we're in August 2020, we're now 75 years from the grandfather of all shocks, the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Okay, welcome everyone to the August edition of Travelog Media. Hope everyone is healthy and happy. And we're going to try a little bit of a shorter format this time. And in this episode, we are talking about the documentary The Shock Doctrine, based on Naomi Klein's book. And of course, on the last show, if you listened to the last show, you remember I was mentioning an article she wrote about coronavirus capitalism. So we're going to get even deeper into her work and the film The Shock Doctrine. And we're going to find out how the current economic system that is in practice and throughout much of the world is, where this came from. Something that used to be considered quackery is now what we have. And so we're gonna dive into the film. So first of all, let me just say hello, Valeria. I hope you're doing. How are you?
Hi. Good. I'm doing good. Excited about this topic. It's very interesting. Complex.
Yeah, complex. Definitely complex. Yep. All right. So I don't know if you want to. I can start, or you can start about your response to the film. I mentioned in the last episode a little bit about how the shock doctrine was introduced into South America through military dictatorships like Pinochet and Videla in Argentina, and others as well, for that matter. But yeah, so I just think it was interesting how, you know, as much as it's kind of sold as, you know, the Chicago School economics, you know, the current economic system we have is being sold as something that's, you know, preferred by democracy-loving people all over the world. Meanwhile, we're going to prove that by through military dictatorships. What was your response?
Okay.
To the film?
So, yeah, so it is a documentary that is based on a book. The book was published in 2007. And yeah, Naomi, how do you say it? Naomi or Naomi?
Naomi, yeah.
Naomi, okay. Yeah, Naomi, it became a New York Times best-selling book immediately. And, you know, it's basically the shock doctrine, the book, and the documentary is Klein's look at the economic history of the last 50 years and the rise of free market fundamentalism around the world. And I remember I explained something like that happened in Guatemala, like how Rios Montt started bringing evangelical groups in the 80s. I don't know if you remember, we talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think what happened in Guatemala also belonged to this doctrine, to this shock doctrine, you know, and it's what she calls disaster capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And she refers to it as a violent system that sometimes requires terror to do its job. So she compares this radical capitalist economy to shock therapy because they both aim to break down patients so they can be reprogrammed. I remember I read a long time ago about the singer of the Ramones and how he was suffering from depression, anxiety, and some manias, and his psychiatrist recommended the parents to give him shock therapy. And I remember I saw it a long time ago in the 90s. And the other Ramones were talking, you know, how after that shock therapy, he was never the same. You know, how the Ramones were all about punk and they had this tremendous vibe on stage. Right. And the other members of the band said that after the shock therapy, the singer of the band was just blank. Like there was nothing in his eyes. He was just gone. Yeah. And that's what happens after a shock therapy. And this is what Naomi Klein says, you know, that this radical capitalistic economy, what they do through disaster capitalism is that they apply a shock therapy on the countries that are revisited by this. And the reason why they do it is so they can push their own political agendas. Right. So, you know, they can be reprogrammed. Mm-hmm. Some of the events that she talks, I made a small list because I love lists. So some of the events that she talks about are tortures and killings under Pinochet's regime in Chile, and also the tortures and killings about Videla in Argentina, mm-hmm. the destruction of New Orleans by Hurricane Katrina and how it expelled many poor Black residents, the instability in Poland and Russia after the collapse of communism, mm-hmm. Bolivia's hyperinflation in the 80s and how economic shock therapy on a resistant population was pushed. And she also talks about Iraq and everything in between that happened in that country and Guantanamo, and you know how that was like a shock therapy for the people. Yeah. And I can, I can talk to you about the Guatemalan shock therapy, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean the scope of the yeah, it covers a lot in her book, and it's been a while since I've read the book, but I think it's basically the same. Covers the same events, historical events. It covers a lot, and yeah, definitely in Guatemala is no exception to the shock doctrine. That was during you mentioned on the last show, I believe, that the 1980s, the Reagan Thatcher era was during that was basically when Rios Montt came to power, and that was some of the most devastating, horrific times, during his regime. So, I mean, you can, if you want to go into that more a little bit, that's not really mentioned much in the book.
No.
They talk about Reagan, the Reagan Thatcher area, and definitely Reagan was like a big, anti-communist crusader. Like he was, we could talk about Reagan, I guess, but anything you want to mention about Guatemala, I'm sure. And as far as that goes, I mean, that's just yet another example of how this shock therapy is applied.
Yeah. She mentioned that countries are shocked by wars, terror attacks, coups d'etat, and natural disasters. And then she says they are shocked again by corporations and politicians who exploit the fear and disorientation of this first shock to push through economic shock therapy. And then she states people who dare to resist are shocked for a third time by police, soldiers, and prison interrogators, which is what happened, in Latin America, which was probably happening right now in Montana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and is the shock doctrine also talks about how, Milton Friedman and how he developed the free market economic revolution, how they push it around the world.
Right.
And, with this free market economic revolution, you hear them in Guatemala all the time. I've heard a lot of people, there's even universities that based all their teachings completely on Friedman's ideas and Friedrich von Hayek and Mises. Mm-hmm. And they all talk, that basically what they say is that the poor is poor because they want to be poor, right, and because they are lazy. Mm-hmm. Which is a very narrow view of the world, because that is not true. And you can prove it in countries like Guatemala, where you have people that wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning, walk 3 or 6 miles to start working. They work from 6 a.m. through 6 p.m. They work all day, and right, they are still poor.
Right.
So the poor are not poor because they want to be poor. The poor are poor because they are oppressed. Right. Because there is a whole system that needs cheap labor, so it's interested in issue politics, laws, and a whole system that deprives the poor to have access to the basic services, mm-hmm, so they can remain poor, uneducated, and cheap labor.
Right.
But they don't tell you that. They make you believe that this free market idea gives you the idea that, yes, you can become free. Yeah. You can become rich. That's I hate that lie.
Yeah,
because that's one of the biggest lies in right now, and it's one that causes a lot of division.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a pretty standard narrative. This myth of the level playing field, and that all it takes is just your own, just hard work, and anyone can become wealthy, and it's a myth. It doesn't take into account the power disparity, it's just a myth. And it's just about the concentration of wealth into fewer and fewer hands, handing everything over to the markets. Everything is, like, what was it talking about? Like during Thatcher and Reagan, it was like this privatization that continues. I mean, it's continues to this day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. We like to think that torture, the techniques used by the CIA and things that are, tactics that are taught at the School of the Americas. That's another thing I should mention. That was also in the film. They talked a little bit about the School of the Americas, is where a lot of these people receive the training in these techniques, in these shock techniques, torture and interrogation and all this stuff. And sadly, that's something that continues to this day. Actually, School of the Americas is now, there's actually a Twitter account. It's be good to follow. It's SOA Watch. It's an organization, kind of a watchdog group to see what they're up to now. So the School of the Americas is now WinSec, and I'm not at the moment. I can't remember what it stands for, but it's basically the same thing as the School of the Americas. The School of the Americas is now known as WinSec. WinSec stands for the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. Sounds lovely. And that was behind actually some of the more recent coups, like in Bolivia, for example, and other places received training from School of the Americas and WinSec. So, yeah, these tactics are still in use. That manual that they talk about, the interrogation techniques based on Dr. Cameron's research in Montreal, and that was eventually published in the one of the training manuals that the CIA uses. So
The handbook of counterinsurgency guidelines.
Yeah, that's it.
That handbook. And there are people that have said that, because it happened. It was like it summarized the results of a war game waged in a fictitious country, but it looked a lot like Guatemala.
Mm-hmm.
And the counterinsurgency techniques that were applied in Guatemala are a lot like that handbook. It's funny that you mention it. I have a couple of notes on that one, but finish your thought.
Well, I guess we should talk about the more recent. I mean, of course, the book was published, basically at the beginning of the Obama administration. So the book doesn't really have that perspective, but so we can maybe talk about things that are, how the shock doctrine is continuing. And of course, in the last show, we mentioned the, COVID-19 capitalism.
The thing is that the book was published in 2009, but it does talk about the politics that have, that the world has followed for the past 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what is going on, and it's how capitalism profits out of crisis. And that's the whole core. So what more shock than a world pandemic and a world lockdown?
Mm-hmm.
I was, I don't know, there are so many approaches to this pandemic, and everyone thinks they have the solution. And I just think that we are being fed terror and horror or to establish, I don't know, I don't want to sound like a crazy person with a tinfoil hat, but
right.
I don't know. This pandemic and the shock that this pandemic is inflicting to the whole world, I don't know what the result of it will be. Because all I see around me is big corporations who already had the structure to survive. They are the ones getting rich. This pandemic is destroying the poor and middle class, completely destroying small businesses, you know. But if you drive through a McDonald's, they're full. There's always a big line at Burger King.
Yeah.
But the restaurant that didn't have the infrastructure to handle a drive-through, they have to be closed.
Yeah.
So it makes me, I don't want to be like Trump that says that this is a hoax and we shouldn't take the thing. No, I don't want to be like that. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't agree either with the whole, okay, we're going to lock down everyone, but McDonald's and Walmart will be open.
Yeah.
Right. It makes no sense for me. And Amazon that already came with a whole infrastructure and a float of cars and workers and buildings everywhere and a well-established system of delivery of supplies, of course they're going to shine right now while small businesses die.
Yeah,
so that would worry me.
Yeah, it's horrible what we're seeing now. It's like, there have been several different people commenting on this phenomenon that's going on right now. Is like we have like Wall Street, the stock market is soaring.
Yeah.
At while thousands of people are dying. The unemployment is just going out of control, and the stock market's doing fine. All the major corporations are well taken care of. Amazon and other big tech companies, they're doing just fine. And we're seeing the all the results of this. The chickens are coming home to roost, as they say. And it was just like, we saw it throughout the film. It talks about a bunch of different, like at the fall of Soviet Union, there was like right after this, they accepted the free market policies, and it had like Moscow had more. Mentions the fact Moscow had more billionaires at that time than any other city in the world. And it's.
But it says that they have 70 million people that were poor. She mentions that there. Mm-hmm. I think it's 70 million.
Yeah. People
living in poor conditions, even though they had more millionaires than anyone else.
Right.
This is and that's exactly what free market creates.
Mm-hmm.
Basically they stretch so much the bandage, the social fabric, they stretch it so much that they just disappear the middle class.
Yeah.
And the poor just became poorer and the rich became richer.
Mm-hmm.
That's what free market really is. And it is not human.
Mm-hmm.
It's an insensitive way of being where corporations just take advantage of cheap labor. And in order for corporations, it's a political system that serves the big corporations. And of course, corporations are going to try to keep it like that. You saw it in Guatemala.
Sure.
The banana company pushed the Congress.
Yeah.
And they moved everything around. I bet you they have more than one handbook of counterinsurgency.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and in those handbooks, that's what they advise: shock
Right.
and violence to instigate that. Because if we're not together, we're not united. If we're struggling, it's a survival. It's a, in Spanish you would say "sálvese quien pueda." I don't know how to translate that, but it's like
whoever you
push.
Yeah, whoever you can, however you can, save yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It breaks down the social fabric.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Travelogue Media. We're going to take a quick music break and a word from Pagosa Springs correspondent Ken Zone. But first, I'd like to remind everyone listening that you can purchase t-shirts, mugs, tote bags, and even COVID masks from the Travelogue Media online store. Just visit teespring.com/stores/Travelogue Media Shop, or just find the link below in the show notes. All funds are used to produce the show, and we do appreciate your support. And now from Pagosa Springs, Colorado, here's correspondent Ken Zone.
More breaking news from downtown Pagtown. The art bandit has been sighted again at the local natural foods grocery store, a local herb emporium, and the local library. Stay tuned. We will have further reports as they arrive.
Also, I'd just like to give a special thanks to Dr. Chenzira Kahina of the Caribbean Cultural Center on St. Croix for sharing this music via the Travelogue Media Forum. The video is from the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago and features a number of really great musical performances from the Pan-African Festival of Trinidad and Tobago in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the 1970 Black Power Revolution. I'll link to the video if you're interested in more details. Well, one of the things in the film that it's mentioned at the end, like I think she writes this in the book, is like and the film opens like with this too, is this idea of like this disorientation of shock is the losing your collective memory, right? And this is something you mentioned also with regard to Guatemala, you know, people trying to, you know, the government trying to just pretend the genocide didn't exist, but this losing the collective memory, the history, and so it's this. So there's a quote I wanted to read. This the idea that I like about this is it says maybe the first act of resistance is to refuse to allow our collective memory to be wiped. So I think that's the important thing, because we're just like inundated right now with crises, like all kinds of shocks, one after another. It seems like now. So to maintain a sort of a continuity, kind of a narrative thread that we're not losing our history, we're not losing, you know, this tradition of struggle, you know. I think that's an important idea, not to lose sight of that.
And vital.
Yeah.
And spaces like Travelogue Media are vital. That's why we need to find more listeners.
Yes.
So if you listen to this, share. Please.
Yes, please.
Share.
Please share.
And send us your ideas, whatever you want us to talk about. You know, we don't consider ourselves specialists, but I do believe strongly in the importance of spaces where you can sit down and talk freely, without being worried about the advertisers cutting you off.
Right.
Because in this corporation world or corporate world, it's very hard to find freedom of speech. No matter how much people say they have it, it's very hard and very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in order for us to help preserve the collective memory, it's important to have discussions like these ones, because we learn together.
Exactly.
And we don't forget.
Yeah.
We help each other not to forget about what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because, especially what worries me with modern world, Jason, is that right now the algorithm in the web shows you based on your likes, shows information based on what you watch.
Mm-hmm.
So more than ever, it's important to have spaces like this and push them, because right now it's been easier to wipe people's memories. To just replace new information.
Yeah.
Because basically Google will feed you whatever they want, and it will most likely be advertisements and trash.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I was following. There was a channel. The tech companies there's another. Maybe we can talk about this on another podcast. There's I don't remember the name of the author right now. She published a book called Surveillance Capitalism. The author is Shoshana Zuboff, and her book is called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism: The Fight for a Human Future at the Frontier of Power. So it's sort of like, taking some of the same ideas that Naomi Klein is talking about, but applying it toward just these specifically to like big tech companies like Google and Facebook, and because these are giants, and they really affect everyone's lives in a major way. Yeah. It's not insignificant. So it's really taking a look at that. So maybe that's something that we can. I don't know if there's I think there's a documentary on that too, but we can look into that.
Let's read that book.
Yeah.
Pass me that book, and that's something that Naomi Klein mentions. She mentions that when this whole thing started, when free market started, and Milton Friedman started, the free market, it was with that they never foresaw that millionaires suddenly were going to start making 400,000 more than everyone else in the world, like those millionaires that you have right now, Jeff Bezos. So let's talk about that. Let's continue to this show with that, because I just read that Amazon will launch 3,000 satellites to space.
Yeah.
I'm horrified with that. 3,000 satellites owned by only one. I don't think that should even be, I don't think that's even ethical.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ethical. And I don't know why they're doing it, but you know what? No one is saying it.
Right.
I saw it on a tech magazine, and they were celebrating it because, of course, it's a great step for humanity. Of course, it's impressive that we have the capacity to do that. It's amazing that we can, something that we dreamt with, it's actually becoming true. But, after everything I've seen, I'm just horrified that this will be, what is this, owned by only one corporation, 3,000 satellites in the sky. So, I agree with you. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Give me the name, and let's do it for the next show.
Sure. Yeah. This, and there was, the United States had this similar moment before, when the monopolies like AT&T and all this, and all these antitrust laws came from that, is just like, because it's going to naturally, this kind of system's going to incline toward monopoly, or, basically these companies have like monopoly like power, and there's no there's actually there's no there's no accountability, no regulation. It's just they do whatever they want. That's a kind of a dangerous idea, I think. And the inequality, it's just it is frightening. So yeah, but we'll get more into it. Let's see, anything we didn't mention about the film before we wrap it up, or?
No, I said everything I had.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything I had.
Yeah. I definitely think we can pick up where this film left off in future episodes, like in the surveillance capitalism and dealing with like companies like Google and Facebook and things like that, and how just we're dealing with a whole new set of rules, and it's just there's a lot to get into, but we'll save that for another episode. So I guess unless you have any other comments, we can leave it there until next time.
Yeah, well, I just want to tell the listeners that basically the shock doctrine tells you about the secret history of the modern world. You think all these events in the 70s, in their 60s were separated. You think during the crisis during the 80s, the crisis during the 90s, the economical crisis during the 90s was separated from everything. The shock doctrine shows you that it's not. It's really an orchestrated system, that it is supposed to be like that. So that instability just helps big corporations and helps the rich get richer. And I have nothing against wealth. I have nothing against wealth. I just have a lot against unethical practices that destroy the social fabric and leave innocent people hurt without a country, without a house, without a culture. Like they destroyed everything in Iraq. And now corporations are just doing whatever they want there. Yeah. I'm not saying I support Saddam Hussein, but I mean, come on.
Yeah. We can have a whole other discussion about wealth and the inequality and things like that, and we'll get into that more in future episodes, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's I guess if there's any comfort you can take from this, it's that eventually the truth will emerge, and while this was during the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of this people just didn't know anything about it and didn't know what was going on. And like she mentioned, this was mentioned in the film also, and I'll wrap this up in a second, but like this idea of becoming shock proof, like we're onto them, like we've seen this playbook, we know the tactics you use, we know the drill, and we're onto it, and we're in a different kind of, like, the internet, the age of communication. We can, we can communicate much more easily with people all over the world, and so the whole world's watching, and I think we are becoming shock resistant in some sense.
Do you know why? Because the whole world is watching, but we're all surviving, because we're all on the verge of losing absolutely everything.
Right.
We're not living, so we're all on survival mode. So even though we have time to sit down and do this podcast, not everyone does it. Exactly. So they're all watching, but they're all more. I've seen it in Guatemala. What this type of struggle creates is a type of selfishness where, okay, the entire country is fucked, but I'm just not. I'm going to focus on myself, because this is what I can control. I think it's like a normal reaction, and that's what worries me. Because then you have all these people that don't engage, and then the free market and the culture of shock comes with a strong propaganda machinery.
Yeah.
You know, you have right now, I was talking to someone, you have right now people in Guatemala convinced that the wall that Trump built was made to detain, to save kids from sex trafficking. You have people in
yeah.
Guatemala that follow the Canon Society and all these hyper-conservative pages that are convinced and spreading that agenda.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think that the whole world is watching, but we're not all understanding the same. And that's why we need the education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. More education for everyone. Yeah, because absolutely propaganda is part of what keeps it going, right? So we have to be counter propaganda, make our counter propaganda.
The truth. It's called the truth.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Valeria, I thank you for taking your time and sharing your thoughts on this this documentary. I think it's an important one for people to see. If you haven't read the book, you can. I mean, for a lot of people, like people are busy and don't have time, and if you just want to watch the documentary, I think it's an important one. It covers a lot.
Yeah.
But
and she's amazing. Like, she's such a deep thinker.
Yeah. Yeah, we can get to some of her other works. I think there's also been documentaries made on This Changes Everything, which is specifically about the climate, like capitalism and climate change.
No Logo, I think, too.
Exactly, yeah, No Logo. And the more recent ones about the Puerto Rico, and my gosh. She doesn't quit. She's all about it, man. She's all
That's
about
great.
it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And we will, please stay safe. And remember to share this with anyone you think would be interested. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for the space, Jason.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this August edition of Travelogue Media. We heard Ancient Rhythm from Singing Sandra and Stand Up Zimbabwe from Brother Valentino. You can find Travelogue Media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. New episodes are available every third Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. Send email to podcast@travelogue.media. Until next time, que todo sea amor, walk tall, live free. Holland and Zulu, Holland and Tutu.